So just got done replacing the fluids, so the primary, the transmission, and the oil on this 2009 Heritage Classic. The only other things that I could find wrong with this bike were, obviously the tires were old, right? They're 12 years old. They still got 4 on the tread life. I put air in them. I've ridden there quite a bit, but I'm probably just going to replace the tires fairly soon just because I just don't feel comfortable riding it with the rubber as old as it is. The other issue was the fuel level gauge kept saying, low reserve, right, LR, and so it was showing empty all the time. And so I diagnosed the problem, and I've diagnosed it down to the fuel sending unit. To get into that, you have to get into the tank. Now, as you can see, I have masked off the tank with lots of towels and stuff, because when you do this, fuel is going to come out from inside of here. So to get this off, essentially just got to remove this acorn nut right here. This is a 1/2 inch. You will also have under the tank emblem, or the concho, if you will, you'll have a little Torx nut here as well, or Torx screw. This is a T25, and you just remove those. This thing is be kind of hard to get off at first if it's been sitting for a while, and it's because the rubber seal is sitting towards the tank. So you might have to rotate a little bit to get it to free up. But once it's freed up, then you can remove the console itself. And there's really no reason to remove all the connectors and stuff. There's really only one connector that connects it into the fuel plate assembly. So just disconnect this connector here, push the little tab, pull it out, get yourself a towel so you can protect the chrome. Now I have rubber under here, so I'm okay on the handlebars, but I want to be careful with the light assembly and, of course, the chrome on the console. So once you get that off, you'll want to get into this plate here. And what you'll have is 10 T20 Torx screws that go across here. And there'll also be a bolt that slides up under here that the console actually hooks down to the acorn nut. I've removed that to speed things up quite a bit. But you can see the rust and the corrosion that's happened to these screws. There's also little plastic washers that go on here. I think the part number is 1132 David. This has been superseded, so there's another number I can't remember off the top of my head right now what it is, but I'll try to add that to the video to replace these. Now, a lot of times people say that I get kind of anal when it comes to trying to find non-ethanol premium fuel. And sometimes they even make fun of me because I go so far out of the way to do that. But the thing of it is, and you'll witness here, what two things ethanol can do, and water, condensation, right? You own a car for 3 to 5 years, who cares? You got an old motorcycle, you probably don't want to be pumping that crap in there. But if and that's why I go out of my way to find premium 91, 92, or 93 non-ethanol fuel to put in Harleys when I can. It's kind of hard to find. I think I've got one place here that I found so far. It's across the Indian dealership of all places that sells premium non-ethanol. But if I can't, and like when we're on the road and stuff, and I have to fill up with just regular premium, I try to add this stuff almost every time. This helps combat it quite a bit. But ethanol and moisture are not good things, and you're fixing to witness why I do this. So as you saw with the screw itself, I mean, you can see the rust and corrosion, and it ate away the plastic gasket that goes around the screw itself, or washer. But once we get inside of here, now when you pull this out, you're going to basically lift it up, and there is going to be a hose right here, and you just pinch into the hose and pull it off this way. Then there's a hose on this side of it that you can get to once you get this up and out. And that one, instead of pinching it in, you take a screwdriver and you push the ears outward and pull it off. But once you do that, then you'll be able to freely remove the fuel filter assembly and the top plate. Now look at the rust and corrosion that's inside of here. It's quite extensive, right? Not to mention that the gasket has totally failed, right? And so I'll show you a picture here now of what a new gasket looks like compared to this old one. So if you're going to go through this, you know, I recommend doing the screws and the gasket, but so the gasket is part number 61381-02A. And you can just see, you know, the newer one is going to be so much better. But while you're doing this, you might as well go ahead and clean this up. And that's what I'm going to do next. And then the other thing is, you know, we showed you the old screw here with the old plastic washer on it. This is the superseded number. I'm going to give it to you now, which is 102-00374. And you can see that Harley's made a modification to this. Obviously, they've known that there would be some seepage and corrosion and stuff, so they've changed the part on this much better than what was on there. And so we get this piece out. And again, the hoses that were attached to this, this one goes towards the front. And obviously, you can see fuel spilling. I also removed these connectors that go on the bottom of the fuel pump assembly. And then also this goes to the fuel sender unit, which I'm going to show you here now. Now this is the fuel sending unit that's inside the tank over on the right side. And I know people are just, anybody watching this right now, just complaining, oh gosh, you didn't show how to take it out. I'm going to talk about how you take it out because it's next to impossible to film how to take this out. Okay, so inside the tank, this sits like this on the right hand side. And so this is what feeds the information to the unit that tells the gas gauge, you know, how much gas you got left in there. Now, this thing operates on a float principle, you know, kind of like you see in a commode or something, right? And what happens is you'll see these contacts here that slide across this piece. And so as the fuel is up or down, level is up or down, the float goes up or down, right? To be full or empty, right? So that's basically the way it works. As you can see from this device here, and I'm going to zoom in, look at the amount of rust, corrosion, and ethanol problems that this thing has experienced over its life, right? And I'm literally, it's hard to tell with the camera, but it has taken me a lot of force, even though I'm using my finger, to push this thing up and down. Hence the reason that it was stuck in this position, and it made me think that my fuel tank was empty all the time. And so if we look at the new one here and compare the two, all right, now all of a sudden, see how freely that moves? So could I clean this up and make it work again? Maybe, but considering that you've gone this far to get this stuff out, it's better just to replace it. But back to pulling this out, you know, if you see this latch right here, this is what clips into place. So if this is sitting in the tank, you have to reach underneath and pull out and then slide it up. You can see there's ridges there where it slides into a bracket on the side inside the tank, and then this clip here. So again, pull out and pull up. On the newer bikes that are, or should I say the newer twin cams, this actually has an articulating arm, and this whole piece is connected to the fuel filter assembly. And so you end up basically pull that top plate out, you kind of set it to the side, you take a screwdriver, and you push the spring so that this piece will float down, and then you pull it out. But on this bike, there's two separate units, right? So there's the top plate assembly, and then this, and then the actual fuel pump is over on the left-hand side. So, you know, again, you can see how loose that moves. Now, some guys or riders may be watching this and think, oh, this is, you know, you're going too far. I mean, you know, reset your mileage odometer and just check your mileage and, you know, 250 miles, fill up your tank. I get it. I've done it my whole life. I've did it with the older bikes. I do it with the 87 I've got right now. But my problem is I'm too anal, right? And if I'm riding my Harley and I'm looking down and I'm seeing a gas light on all the time and low reserve, it just bothers me. It's something I'd be concentrating on all the time. And I mean, if it ain't right, fix it. That's the way I look at it. Now the next piece is you start looking at this corrosion and you think, oh gosh, well, what else happened? Well, of course. I mean, it's probably the gasket broke down. It leaked. You can see that there's paint chipping, there's rust. That's just natural for a gas tank. I mean, that's what you're going to run into. But because I've done this before on the 87, I mean, literally that bike, you know, I had to redo the whole entire gas tank. I know what you need to do to fix this. And if you're going to go this far, you might as well go ahead and deal with this while you're here. Now, you can do a gas tank liner. A lot of them that are aftermarket that you do this yourselves just doesn't last very long. I mean, you can take the time to do it. I just don't do it. I did it on 87. Use a company called GTL out of California. They do a really good job. They have two different flavors of doing it. They either will burn the entire tank, which ruins your paint job. If you're going to get it repainted anyway, that's fine. And then they reseal it with a lifetime guaranteed seal. The guy even told me, he said, there are people who won't even be walking the planet, and that inside of that gas tank will be perfect. You know, or they have an option where they save your paint and they basically do what I'm fixing to do, but they do it at a lot better level than I'm going to do it. And so if you get this far, you might as well go ahead and look at your corrosion. I'm going to shine a light in here and hopefully you can see this, but you can see where the ethanol has eaten away the gas tank liner inside of here. And you really can see it back in there. You can actually see pieces of gas tank liner floating in the bottom of this tank, just gums and crap and that kind of stuff. Quite frankly, I mean, a lot of times, you know, guys will just let it go. I mean, the fuel filter will get it and all that good stuff. I get it. But, you know, if you've already got to the point where you've taken out the fuel sending unit, and I'm fixing to take out the fuel pump, but you get all that stuff out, you might as well go ahead and take the tank off and clean it out. And I'm fixing to go through the process to do that. Then what we'll do is I'll clean all this up. I'll replace the fuel filter that's inside of here. Of course, the gaskets and everything. Put in the new fuel sending unit. Clean up the pump. Kind of get it all clean. Clean to the inside of the tank. And then put it back together. So that's going to be the next step. Now, I went ahead and removed the fuel pump because obviously we're going to take the gas tank off. Just to give you an idea what this looks like. This just sits in there on the left-hand side. There's a tab here that you pull up, and you slide these two ears out from underneath the bracket. And you just kind of work it around and pull it up and out. But the reason I wanted to show this was there's a device on the bottom of this unit called a strainer, and that gets the heavy particulates out of the fuel before it hits the fuel pump, right? Just a part of another piece of the fuel filter system. This could likely be cleaned. I just went ahead and ordered one. Like I said, when you do this type of stuff and you're going to this level, do yourself a favor and just go ahead and make everything right while you're in there. That way you don't have to deal with this mess later on. So moving on, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drain the rest of the fuel out of here. The only thing left inside the fuel tank is this hose that basically comes out of the, what could be best described as what we call the petcock at the end, but this is the fuel outlet valve here that comes out of the bottom of the tank. And so when I remove the tank, I'll go ahead and pull this off. But really, you can go ahead and disconnect this if you want to. You just push this up and then pull it out. But I'm going to go ahead and get the fuel out so that I don't have a mess down in here. And then we'll go and remove the tank. So next piece is to take my handy dandy little siphon and get as much fuel out as I can, not to mention some of this garbage, and then we'll take the tank off. Okay, so done ciphering the gas, just to show the user the kind of crap that's in the tank. So this is gas tank liner, probably some rust from the metal in the tank. Turns into a fine powder. That's the shit that's going in your engine. So you can see the siphon device I have has chunks inside of there that was sucking up. And then if we look at the gasoline that came out of the tank, look at all that garbage that's in there. Hence the reason I want to take the time to pull the tank and get as much of that garbage out as I can. So anyway, now we'll go into actual gas tank removal. Okay, so now we're getting ready to remove the tank. I think I mentioned this before, but you definitely, if you haven't done so already, you want to remove the negative battery terminal before you do this. And so, you know, looking under the tank, really all you're going to need to do. Now, Harley uses these clamps that they pull onto the hose that clamps, and this is the cross-feed valve. Even though this is a single layer tank, obviously there's a split in the middle, so this is what keeps the fuel level equal between the two chambers, if you will, of the tank. They've done that for quite some time on the larger tanks. But you'll need to remove this. You can, you know, there's several different variants to do this. I just take a pair of tin snips and clip these bad boys off. You obviously can put those back. You can put on the worm drives if you want to, that you can just screw on to get those clamped back on. I'm kind of anal though, so I try to do things like they did at the plant when I put it back together. So if you're going to do that, you're going to need these. The part number is 10038, A as in apple. And the tool, you slide this on just like you do regular worm drive retainer clip. But you'll need something like this. This is a Motion Pro. And you go on the ends of it and you just clamp it down when you get done. And the reason is I guess they could say they're better form fitting, but really, how many times do you take the tank off? Not very often at all. So that's why they do that. Pretty easy to deal with those though. You'll need a 9/16 socket head or wrench here, and then the bolt for it, or the nut for it, is on the other side. This comes off, and then on the back here is a T40 torque screw that's going to come out, and the tank just ratchets up and pulls out. Also, there, if you'll notice under here, there is a wire feed as well that's going to go to the sending unit on your tank, and so you'll need to deal with that once you rotate that up and disconnect that. I would highly advise not removing this. I've done so before. This is not easy to replace if you do that, so be careful with this. And then again, you know, you'll push this in and pull this out. This is relatively simple, and the fuel doesn't come out when you do that, so not a big deal there. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and remove the tank. I just had to add this little nugget for those that are sitting there still wondering whether they should take the time to clean out their tank while they've gone this far. Watch this. You can imagine the kind of preventative maintenance that you can do just by taking this out and actually cleaning that garbage out of your tank. Just a quick note on this model. So, just like any other Harley, right? I mean, we slid this bolt out, right? You took out the T40 Torx in the back. The tank grasped hold of this gasket here, but and it holds on pretty tight, but you're just gonna have to keep working it. But the thing I wanted to mention about this was, I remembered I said be extremely careful with this wire. On this model, I haven't seen this, maybe this was a twin cam 96 thing or Heritage Classic thing. I've seen this, you know, route up into the tank, which it does, but it's coming down into the main chassis connector here into the main harness. It was actually located under this thing. So it was like this, and extremely tight, right? So I had to lift the tank up, come under here, release this, slide it down, then I was able to pull the connector out. So just be careful of this when you pull the tank up. Like I said, watch this wire, but especially on this model, it's a great idea. I personally, all the tanks I've taken off, I haven't quite seen this connector, but I mean, I'm, you know, Harley changed the design, I guess. But yeah, this is just a little clamp that goes under there, so be careful of that. Okay, quick update. Just to see the amount of loose stuff that I pulled out of the bike, that's just with my hand reaching into the tank and pulling that garbage out. So that you saw it, I pulled it out of the right side of the tank, but also the left side. So that's just the stuff that is loose that I could get out. So what we're going to do now, and this is probably the most important part of the video, is we're going to fill the tank. First of all, I'm going to dump any excess gas that's out of here, or any loose particles that I can get out of there. And the reason that you need to get all the gas out of here is it has a higher flash point, and it'll explode if there's sparks. We're going to use kerosene, which has a lower flash point, and it's the best to do this kind of stuff with. So when I said the most important part, that is, we're going to use, you can use ball bearings or whatever. I just use stainless steel nuts. And you put them in the tank with the kerosene, and you put the cover back on, shake the crap out of it to get all this loose stuff to break up so that you can get it out of the tank. And when I say the most important part, that means count your nuts, right? So I've got 5 here, 5 there, 5 there, 15. So when I get done with this, I should have 15 nuts. You don't want to get done with this and have 12, right? So you don't want to leave it in your tank. So that's the key thing. So I'm not going to film this, but basically I'm going to dump the gas, get any loose particles that I can. I'm going to pour kerosene in there. I'm going to dump the nuts in there. I'm going to put the cover back on with the gasket just to keep it from sloshing. And I'm going to take it outside, and I'm going to shake the crap out of it. And we're going to dump all the kerosene out, count our nuts, right? That's the most important thing. And then we're going to let it evaporate, right? And get the tank clean. And then once it's clean, I'll put it back on the bike, and we'll slowly start to reassemble it. The other thing too is obviously we're going to want to hook that back up at least temporarily so that the kerosene doesn't come out. So I'm just going to slide this back on for now there without clamping it, and there we go. So I've got the kerosene cleaned out the inside of the tank. Washed the tank to get all the excess kerosene off the paint, and cleaned everything out, and just letting it evaporate. Now, in the interim, thought I'd bring up the fuel filter assembly. Take a look at this, just to give you an idea of what it looks like inside of here after just 12 years, but only 2,500 miles. You can see a lot of the rust residue that's around the fuel filter assembly, and I cleaned a little bit of it off with alcohol, but I wanted to show this so that people could see what you're dealing with inside of here. Now, obviously, I ordered a fuel filter. There's no reason to go this far into the tank without actually doing that, so I don't have to do it again in the future very soon. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this piece out, this clip that holds this in. So you pull the tab down and slide this out. All right. Then you can remove this piece, this top piece here. Sorry, I'm going to do this with one hand so I can hold the camera. All right, and once you pull that out, this is what a fuel filter looks like when it's full of rust and gunk. and that kind of stuff. And you can see the rust inside of here. Obviously, I'm going to take this piece in and to the house and clean it up pretty good and replace that filter. This piece down here below, if we remove these clips, so sorry, you can get to see all that, but I pulled that clip off. I'm going to slide this little guy out. That's what it looks like in there. Just lots of rust and grime and corrosion, and the filter or the gasket and everything is just kind of nasty. So okay, so now we've completed the kerosene and the hex nuts. It knocked out a lot of the grime, got rid of all that junk in there, cleaned it out really good. And so, you know, at this point, one could go get a gas tank liner if you wanted to. It's pretty expensive to do that. I've done it on the older bikes. Just depends. I mean, you know, this is something I'll likely do here and there as I change the fuel filter anyway, and I ride so much, I'd probably be in here quite a bit. So I'm really not worried about a gas tank liner on this one. So looking at the parts that we've cleaned up and dealt with, or I've cleaned up and dealt with, we'll just zoom in here. So there are the old, this part number has been superseded, by the way, but the old plastic rivets on the, or plastic washers on the rusted bolts. And so I got new screws, right? This is the new part number 102000374, 10 of those. Also, I'm going to go ahead and use a fuel system cleaner to kind of go through the injectors and stuff, because you could see the grime that was in those. So I'm going to go ahead and, when I start off new, non-ethanol premium, and then add this stuff to it to clean them out really good. Removed all the rust and grime off of the top plate. There's the new gasket. There's the old gasket. Gasket part number 61381-02A. And moving over, so took apart the fuel filter assembly and just really cleaned it out good. So got all the gunk out of it. This entire assembly, if you order the whole thing, is $100, and I just don't feel like spending that kind of cash. There is the old fuel filter and O-ring. There's the new fuel filter and O-ring. The old fuel regulator and O-ring, the new fuel regulator with the O-ring already on there. Fuel pump, so I cleaned this off really good. You know, just cleaned it up. You know, kind of got all the gunk out of it and everything. This part, I mean, it's only had 2,500 miles on it, so this basically is new. I'm not even going to worry about doing anything with that. This is called the strainer. It clips onto the bottom here. This little knob goes in that hole right there, and we'll reassemble it when I put it back on there. But I just basically carb cleaner, blew from the inside out to blow all the junk out, and then, you know, went in hot water, Dawn dishwashing soap, that kind of thing. Got as much junk out as I could. And really, this guy's just to prevent larger particles from getting up into the fuel system. There is the old float I showed before. There's the new float. So we're going to be, or should I say fuel sending unit, if you want to call it that. And I'll be sitting up in there. Part number for the fuel filter was 61011-04A. I also got another O-ring for one of the hoses that's in the tank, 11387A. And then also the fuel regulator assembly, 6101504A. And so what we're going to do, and I'm not going to, for essence of time, I'm just going to show you what I'm going to do, but we're going to put the fuel filter in here. We're going to add the O-ring, and then this piece clamps. Now you'll see there's a notch on this side, and there's a notch over here. That goes like that. Okay, then this slides through there and clips to that little clip right there. That's all there is to that. And then the regulator goes inside of here, and that's all pretty self-explanatory. There's really not a whole lot to that, so I'm not going to show that. But once we do that, Then we will shove the fuel sending unit vertically with the float towards the front of the tank down the right hand side, click. Then we're going to take the fuel pump. This assembly is on the top. This slides in, click. This hangs down the left hand side. These come up. Plugs that go in, right? Then this guy, and he has no ring on him, goes into here. And then outside of there it goes to the one that feeds out the funnel that goes out to the EFI. And so I'm not going to show all this assembly, but that's what we're fixing to do.